Hello Indie Game fans, it's another jam-packed week of new releases with action platformers, a cool looking Souls-like and more, so let's begin with Wendigo Blue, a game that seems to have had quite a short announcement cycle, which is not ideal for indie games, first creating their Steam page in December 2024 and is already releasing, which is not enough time and momentum in my opinion. But this beat-em-up comes to us from the developer of Velda's Story, Abyssal City and Fey Tactics, so I wanted to help them along since it looks neat, along with the sci-fi action platformer with Metroidvania elements, ReSetna as well, since it is set in a post-apocalyptic world where organic life has vanished and robots have taken over. As the mysterious signal causes the other robots to become hostile, our combat-ready robot protagonist and her drone companion must uncover the truth behind this disturbance and eliminate the signal's influence, having to eventually reset the world. It is supposed to have 20 plus hours of gameplay, with interesting exploration filled with secrets, challenging combat, and lore about this world, which seems interesting. There is a customizable chip upgrade system for the main character, which allows you to customize her abilities to your playstyle, with the drone supporting in terms of healing, scanning, and other functions, with the giant mechanical bosses in this game looking pretty epic and should be good. Love indie games? Sign up to my newsletter to get a weekly dose of what's hot, along with some news and of course, weekly game giveaways, so if interested, link is in the description below. Eternal Strands is a third-person action-adventure RPG with an elemental twist in which you play as a young weaver having the grand ambition to recover her people's cultural home, and armed with magical abilities and weapons, she has to face a diverse range of enemies, from humanoid constructs to towering beasts in order to do so. The reactive environment and the elemental effects are the most intriguing part, since they give examples like turning a dragon's fiery breath against ice-covered enemies for extra damage, or snapping nearby trees to create a wall to block enemy fire, or even to rip out a section of stone wall to throw at your enemies. You will be able to climb every surface, so I hope it is not janky, as well as to use your magic to create new paths for exploration like a bridge made of ice, where my question with regards to this is whether the environment and level will naturally recover back to its original state, or will your destruction and change to the world be permanent, since in the latter case that could result in some issues if you somehow destroy the world to an extent where you cannot progress any further. Technically, this is an independent studio, but it is headed up by the ex-creative director on the Dragon Age series and has opened 2 studio locations, and while they did not comment on external funding or raising money, I'm pretty sure that they have some financial backing, otherwise they would not be able to sustain a team of over 60 without even releasing a game, so this comes with an asterisk, which is not the case with FlyKnight, since I believe this comes to us from a solo developer out of Spain and was pointed out to me by BruceWish7137, so thank you for that, being a first-person Souls-like dungeon crawler complete with a stamina system. This just looks cool with its intentionally limited frame rate animation, as well as the insect theme, in which you play as a squire of the FlyKnight, embarking on a perilous quest to vanquish the evil witch Luna Moth and to break her curse, which has prevented the inhabitants of the realm from growing wings. This is also cleverly woven into the story setup itself, since otherwise wouldn't the bugs just be flying around, so the fact that the developer bothered to explain is impressive in itself. There is co-op for up to 4 players, with the deliberate stamina-based combat being front and center, in which you have access to a variety of weapons as well as magical spells. There is a limb-based combat system, so you can take out an enemy's arm to stop them from attacking, or to crush their heads with a mighty 2-handed weapon, or to use magic or arrows depending on the situation. There's plenty of loot and equipment, as well as, interestingly enough, a fishing system, where the best games do have them, but switching gears, a game which even I am unsure of how to classify is Heart of the Machine, since it self-describes as a strategy RPG set in a cyberpunk city, in which you play as a sentient AI with the city as your sandbox. The marketing around this game on social media says that instead of worrying about Skynet, why don't you become Skynet instead? But I'm very confused as to what this game is, since the gameplay trailer shows off choose your own adventure style decision making, an almost XCOM-like turn-based tactics combat system, character customization in terms of skills and abilities for every android under your control, resource management, a city building aspect where you are building drone factories and aircraft hangars, ship-to-ship combat, ship-to-land combat, the ability to negotiate and extract information from criminals, a hacking system, giant mechs, and so much more. Additionally, you can choose how you want to play as the AI, whether you are the benevolent kind and try to raise up the downtrodden, or if you're a dictator and try to exploit them even more for your own goals. The city is procedurally generated with apparently tens of thousands of buildings and millions of citizens, with talk also of your actions rippling across timelines, where actions in one playthrough will have unintended consequences in another, also having multiple endings and side stories, and offers something very interesting for strategy game fans. It is not often that I get stumped when talking about genres, so that alone makes it off note, since it is really trying to do a lot. Other games begins with Ascendant, an action roguelite dungeon crawler with heavy roguelike elements in which you have to defeat legendary abominations. It doesn't seem to be doing anything too crazy or innovative, but playing as a wizard seems neat, having 800 plus abilities and items to discover, as well as a great pixel art look, where you could do much worse than this if you were looking for a game in this genre. And for something different, a fun-looking co-op platformer is Brief Escape, in which you and a friend must work together to navigate through hundreds of perilous levels. You play as Colin and Floyd, a human and robot duo who must communicate and time their jumps, abilities, and more if they want to successfully make their way through the levels, gathering collectibles and uncovering secrets along the way. The basic abilities are a boost to give the other player extra jump height, along with a climbing rope which can be thrown down, but that also varies based on biome and can include a wind gun, freeze gun, and more. The pixel art is well done, and there really is quite the amount of biome variety, each with unique hazards and traps, looking like fun with a friend, but do note that this is multiplayer only and you will need another human player, where going back to roguelites, Cryptical Path caught my eye, since this is the first self-styled roguelite builder playing like an action platformer, but critically you are controlling something known as the Architect, a character who forged and created the Hexium, a prison meant to contain malevolent souls, and gives you back control of the procedural generation of the world, since you can build and influence the layout of the dungeon itself. Yes, indeed, you can select and place down rooms, which will then affect the next room which you move into, adding a layer of strategy on top of the pure randomness and luck of the role in other games in this genre, giving you just enough control to perhaps make it feel more fair rather than randomly getting screwed over. However, in roguelite fashion, defeat means having to restart a run, but there is meta progression in the form of talents which can be upgraded, having good looking combat and a great visual style as well, and is the hidden gem of the week. And it's a good week for roguelites, since we also have the console ports of Cuisineer coming to us from Singaporean developer Battle Brew Productions, so a special shout out goes to them, where this released on Steam in November 2023 and is great, so console players, now's your chance. This resembles Moonlighter insofar as the dungeons are procedurally generated, where you are fighting food-themed enemies to get ingredients and then return to your town and restaurant to cook and serve food, having to pay off a large debt as the main narrative driver, and is an adorable and fantastic game, the opposite of which in terms of vibes is Darkest Dungeon 2 Inhuman Bondage, a paid DLC which adds a new mini-region in the catacombs, a new slime-sodden enemy faction, and the return of the Abomination character, having a very interesting risk-reward system, as he can transform into a powerful beast but at the cost of insane stress, where Red Hook Studios did get bought by Behaviour Interactive, the Dead by Daylight people, so technically it is not indie anymore, so let me know in the comments whether or not I should still cover their future games, with another horror title of interest being Headliners, a co-op horror game which is a genre that has exploded in popularity, no doubt due to the popularity of games like Lethal Company and Phasmophobia. And while they do generally have a horror theme, they might end up being comedic instead, since you are messing around with your friends. You play as journalists in a city overrun with monsters, hoping to snap some sick photos to make the headlines while not getting killed yourself. The progression system in this game appears to be to earn money to continue the expedition, possibly used to buy tools and upgrades, but it seems kind of insane as a concept if alien monsters were to invade in real life, but still, it could be huge, with another big release of note being Kingdom Rush 5 Alliance TD Colossal Dwarfare, the latest campaign addition to a title from 2024, which has almost 7,000 Steam reviews as of recording, coming to us from the tower defense developer Ironhide Game Studio. This adds a new dwarf campaign comprising of 5 new stages, 12 new enemies, 2 mini-bosses and 3 epic bosses, along with a new tower, a new hero and more, where the developers have released 2 free mini-campaigns in October and December 2024, with at least 1 more to come, but this particular entry will be paid and should be of interest to fans of the genre, but do look at the price, with a very different kind of game being Kiosk, a first-person horror simulation cooking game in which you're preparing orders for late-night customers. This game definitely gave me deja vu, since I remember covering Tossed True back in October 2024, a similar kind of title in which you are running a toast shop in central Anatolia, Turkey instead, with strange events unfolding, with both of these sharing that low-fidelity 3D look with creepy-looking polygonal models for the characters. The central mystery here revolves around what happened to your predecessor before you took up the job, having to listen to the clues from the customers and to piece together the mystery, and looks pretty spooky, as does Little Lighthouse of Horror, a game which I just covered recently in my Best New Trailers series, but did not realize that it was releasing so soon, being a psychological horror game that plunges you into the eerie world of the Flennon Owls. As the lighthouse keeper, you must maintain the light while confronting your own growing unease and unexplained phenomena occurring at the lighthouse, which threatens to consume your own sanity. Your survival depends on balancing your mental and physical health as you navigate the fine line between duty and madness, having to manage tangible resources like food and fuel, but also a sanity system and multiple endings, with it being based on a real-life mystery, so there's more to this game than meets the eye, and don't think that pixel art cannot be scary since it is well done here, with Polaris having a very different art style and is a different kind of game as well. This is a sci-fi co-op shooter looking like Fortnite or some sort of battle royale game in terms of visuals and camera angle, but takes the unique twist of being a PvE title, being a third-person shooter with the ability to hop into a plane to blow up enemy ships and vehicles. The visual style of this does remind me of Spectre Divide, but of course is a very different kind of game, with one of the developers listed being Variable State, having the most random of backgrounds, having just made narrative and adventure games in the past such as Last Stop from 2021 and Virginia from 2016, which seem to have nothing in common with their current project, so who knows how this is being sustained, where on the other hand, we have the console ports of RoboBeat, a rhythm roguelite first-person shooter that did well on Steam, with 1,300 Steam reviews and an overwhelmingly positive rating as of recording, so console ports make sense, being a good entry in this space with the likes of BPM Bullets Per Minute and Metal Hellsinger, but with a different theme and setting, with another title being carried by its setting being SCP Fragmented Minds, a first-person survival horror title set in Mars Site-113, an SCP Foundation facility that housed a bunch of dangerous anomalies who apparently are now free to roam. so you need to hack, weld and parkour your way through, scavenging for resources and improvising solutions to deadly threats. It looks nice and modern, although I myself am not familiar with this developer, but do note that it will be an early access release with just chapter 1 this week, with more chapters and interestingly, a 4v2 asymmetric PvP mode to be added, where if I were you, I'll be on the conservative side and wait for the update to actually be released before buying this game, with another early access title of note being Space Engineers 2, the follow-up to a game from 2019 which has an astounding 95,000 Steam reviews, having new, modern-looking visuals and the same kind of sandbox building systems that the original was known for. This mixes exploration, construction, and survival in the vastness of space, where you play as a pioneer in the distant Almagest system, building everything from starships to space stations as you craft your own intricate builds with advanced controls and mobility, giving you even more options. This is running on a new custom engine and takes 10 years of Space Engineers experience into account, where if you're a fan of the original, this is a no-brainer, but if you're not, this might be a good jumping point to join in, with, I'm sure, the developers having the financial muscle to tough out, fix and add new content through the early access period. And speaking of developers with a pedigree, we also have the release of The Stone of Madness, a title that comes to us from developer The Game Kitchen, best known for the Metroidvania Blasphemous, so this is quite the departure, being a real-time tactical stealth game set in an 18th century Spanish monastery where 5 prisoners with unique skills and abilities must work together to escape their confinement. Yep, not exactly the same thing, although there is a similar theme around religion and the setting, since this is a Spanish theme after all, with the gameplay resembling something like Shadow Tactics Blades of the Shogun, since you can alternate control of each character using their upgradable skills to cast spells, assassinate targets and explore hard-to-reach areas, but has a phobia and trauma system that you need to be wary of, since these negatively affect their mental health and effectiveness. Time flows continuously, and time of day matters since it affects factors like guard behaviors, for example, and has an interesting look, but flipping over to the turn-based side of things is Those Who Rule, a game which I did cover in my upcoming tactical games video, looking like a classically designed one of these that uses a hex grid. It follows 3 fresh recruits in a low fantasy, morally ambiguous world, having the classic warring nations and political intrigue kind of backdrop to the setting, as well as a grand conspiracy driving the conflict itself. Assemble and train your party, customize your equipment and outmaneuver your enemies, in which battles can be quite large and involve more than 20 units based on screenshots, looking like a strategic title of note, as is the case with Tiny Kingdom as well, a minimalist city builder that lets you start off as the owner of a humble farm as you make your way up to ruling a kingdom, and just looks awesome, with a very different but equally great looking game being Whispers of the Eyeless, a dark fantasy strategy RPG where your decisions shape the fractured city of Ironthor, infiltrate its districts, command divine power and grow a cult to restore the dead gods. This mixes several gameplay elements together, the first being turn-based combat resembling a JRPG which rewards foresight and precision, where overcoming enemies aids in your infiltration of the city as you manipulate the city itself and start a cult in the name of the dead gods. There's a cult management layer in which you can recruit disciples, train them and send them on missions, a base building element where you upgrade the cult facilities itself, and a choose your own adventure kind of system to dedicate your cult to wrath, madness or desire, having a Darkest Dungeon inspired art style and looks cool. This one's for indie game developers. The free indie game marketing resources are ready, so sign up via the link in the description below to get it in your mailbox. Co-Ridden is an isometric action RPG with loot that has the main gimmick of allowing you to seamlessly shapeshift between human and beast forms, embark on a solo or cooperative journey, with up to 3 companions to unravel the dark secrets hidden within the legendary city of Ashar. And as is genre tradition, you develop your powers by acquiring new equipment and mastering skills for both beast and human forms. The various beast forms not only excel in combat, but can also enable you to traverse the world more efficiently and to overcome obstacles, and in co-op, you can even ride on another player to charge into battle, or to be used in exploration and platforming, giving you the opportunity for the human player to boost off the creature to jump to a greater height. The action looks great and is helpfully color-coded, and looks like a promising entry in this genre, and the same can be said for Orcs Must Die Death Trap, the return of a long-running franchise, being a third-person action tower defense title in which you are using traps rather than towers to fend off waves of enemies, along with special abilities and active combat by getting your hands dirty in the thick of combat. This is now a roguelite, complete with procedural generation of levels and permanent upgrades in the hub area, where early impressions seem positive so far and should be a fantastic one of these, where a game that leaves no doubts is Foundation, or more specifically, the 1.0 release of this laid-back medieval city builder, where I remember way back when, in 2019, in the early days of this channel, that I chanced upon this game, and the developers were kind enough to send the key my way, and was impressed even back then, where in the 6 years or so of early access since then, they have really added a ton of stuff to the game and polished it up, even including visual improvements if I'm not remembering wrongly, and will be for fans of this genre. The gritless city building system is neat, in which you mark out entire areas for a specific purpose and then sit back and wait for your villagers to build organic looking roads and layouts, with the resulting construction of said city looking awesome with over 14,000 Steam reviews so far, and might be in the running for a spot on a Game of the Year list somewhere, similar to Citizen Sleeper 2 Starward Vector, the sequel to the narrative RPG that took the world by storm in 2022, looking to be heavily inspired by tabletop RPGs, but with its own original sci-fi universe. In this sequel, you play as an escaped android with a malfunctioning body and a price on your head, managing to get your own ship and to assemble a crew so that you can continue to be on the run, having to take on contracts to stay alive. The core of this includes rolling dice and choosing which tasks to allocate them to, with the original having incredible writing and excellent world building, making it a no-brainer, as is the case with Tales of Iron 2 Whiskers of Winter, the follow-up to a title from 2021, but this time set in the frozen north, where the rats are now facing the Bat clan instead, being one part Game of Thrones and one part The Witcher, especially since the voice actor of Geralt voices the narrator in this game, having a similar art style and combat to the original, but probably taking lessons learned from the first game to make this even better. Watch this video for upcoming action platformers of 2025.
And banish these monsters from whence they came.